everything that I do inside of my business all begins and ends with some type of a workflow. This is by far the most important thing in my business, and honestly becomes the foundation for which everything I do and create is based on. So if you're a photographer, or anyone else for that matter that's in the creative space that's interested in how all this stuff works, this is going to be the video for you, because I'm going to show you precisely how I do it. So there's actually four main workflows that comprise my business. The first is a creative workflow, and this has everything to do with photography, the technical, the composition, the lighting, setting up the shot, camera settings, and all that good stuff. The second is a business workflow, and this really speaks to the ins and outs of the business, paying taxes, doing the contracts, communicating with clients, keeping track of what's going on, the operational side of running the business. There's the marketing and blogging and social media components, the post workflow, the destination of the images that are created, where the pictures go and when and why and how, and then there's the data workflow. And this is in my opinion, the most important part, is the throughput of the data, the data integrity itself, from the point of capture straight through into archives, where that data lives, how it's managed, where it goes. That is what I'm talking about today. So right out of the gate, I just want to make a few points as a bit of a disclaimer. Number one, I'm not saying that my workflow is best. I don't believe in the term best. I don't think there's any place for the term best to even exist in the creative spaces at all. And just like the end result, in which is a photograph, everything becomes very, very subjective from one person to another. But what I will say is that my workflow is very effective and works incredibly well for me and my business and what my needs are as a professional. Point number two is, this is not a workflow that was slapped together a couple weeks ago. This is something that I've had in place for well over 6 years. Since I last updated my computer system, it has seen and ingested and processed over 1 million shots in that time between myself and my assistants, all the shoots and projects and videos and all the stuff that I do. It's been amazing. The third point is that all of this is very scalable. So if you're just starting out, or on the flip side, if you have an incredibly busy studio and a storefront and so on, everything can be scaled down or scaled up depending upon the volume of business that you have. All right, and with that said, let's get to it. The data workflow starts right at the point of capture. I choose to use a pro level camera. I happen to like Canon, and one of the most important features of their flagship 1DX is the fact that I can write data to 2 different memory cards simultaneously. I keep a 128 gigabyte card in slot number 2, and this is enough to hold the entire wedding. More importantly, I switch out to smaller cards using memory slot 1 all day long as they become capacitized. So this effectively gives me what's referred to as a RAID 1 data protection right out in the field. If one of the memory cards becomes lost, damaged, stolen, or otherwise compromised, I have all the data on a secondary card, safe and secure. A quick tip when using memory cards: use smaller memory cards whenever possible. I use the big 128 gig card as a backup in memory card slot number 2 in my 1DX. In memory card slot 1, the most I'm using is either an 8 or a 16 gig card. God forbid you lose a memory card, you delete something, you format over the card, Anything can happen to these memory cards. By switching out to smaller cards throughout the day, regardless of what you're shooting, it's a way to mitigate your liability and control the risk. Now, when I get back from the wedding or photo shoot, obviously all this data needs to be ingested into my computer system. Here's how that's going to work. First, I connect both mine and my assistant's master memory cards to the computer system simultaneously and start downloading all the images while I go take a shower and have a bite to eat. So the big advantage of using the 128 gig memory card as a backup in the camera is the fact that when I get home, it makes ingesting the images very, very simple because everything is on one card, as opposed to having to download multiple memory cards. So in a way, switching out to those smaller cards, those actually become the backup to this. I love it. All of this data is ingested into the computer system through this magic little program called Photo Mechanic. In the entire scope of photography, I would say there's probably just a few things, a handful of things that you must have to be very successful. Photo Mechanic is one of them. It is the most, absolute, positively, the most amazing program that I've ever used when it comes to moving data from point A to point B and to culling and sorting out all of my shots. So the first stop on the data pipeline is what I refer to as my digital warehouse, and this is a G-Tech G-Speed Q. It's 3 terabytes in capacity. It's set up as a RAID 5 and is comprised of 4 separate hard drives that are enterprise class and together make up the total capacity. Basically, it's just a box with 4 hard drives in it. It's a RAID 5, which means that all the data that's written to it is what they call striped across all 4 drives for faster access, as opposed to having just one hard drive with one drive that just spins at a constant. It's nice because this hard drive can actually withstand a failure of one hard drive and the other 3 have enough data to rebuild itself. But that's not enough. So every single morning at 3 a.m., a program called Carbon Copy Cloner, try saying that 10 times fast, and wakes up my computer. It looks at the data that's on this digital warehouse drive and it then copies it to another drive which lives on the other side of my desk, and this is called the Live Work Backup Drive. This is a G-Tech RAID 1 drive enclosure. It's also 3 terabytes in size, and it exactly mirrors everything that's on my main digital warehouse drive. This is the backup drive for that hard drive. So every single morning when I wake up, I know that I have 2 sets of copies of everything that's current and live in my world. And within those 2 different hard drive enclosures, they each can lose drives and still be okay. Now, the directory structure on this drive is absolutely critical to my workflow. Here it is. At the root level, I have a folder for all the different types of work that I do. Weddings, engagements, commercial, photo booth, other, and Austin. Austin's my son, he's 3 years old, and he gets a dedicated space everywhere in my life. This is my son, Austin. Can you say hi? When the dialog box opens for Photo Mechanic, I then create the following subfolder structure for each event that I do. So here's a wedding example. I would use the reverse date first, the 4-digit year, the 2-digit month, and the 2-digit day, underscore last name. This just serializes all the projects so I have a way to reference them later on when things go to archive. Inside of the client's root folder, I then make another subfolder called raw. So all the images are then copied into this raw folder, and from there, they're sorted and culled using Photo Mechanic, and I remove all the test shots or unflattering images, and I get it down to the core shots that are going to wind up being delivered to the client. Once I have that, they're then copied into another subfolder. Okay, here's how this works. I drew it all out on paper for you. First, you have your hard drive. Then you have a folder for your category. In this case, it's weddings. Then I create a folder for each client with the reverse date, underscore, and their last name. Then I simply make a subfolder called raw, and this is where all of the images get downloaded into. Once I'm finished sorting out all the images, they then go into this last folder, which is the reverse date, underscore, the last name, and then I add the word final to it. This is then the folder that gets ingested into Lightroom and becomes a referenced catalog. This now becomes the live folder, and it's what will be referenced with Lightroom for all the color correction. At this point, we're finished with Photo Mechanic. Both Lightroom and the master referenced catalog file live on an internal solid-state drive on my iMac. By keeping the program and the catalog file on a solid-state drive, the program runs very quickly and it's very easy to make edits. Now, there's absolutely no need to store all of your raw files on a solid-state drive. Keep them on a fast rotational drive, and as long as you're using a reference catalog, it'll be just fine. So within Lightroom, you have what's called a catalog file, and this is super important because the catalog file is what contains all the adjustments, all the edits, and all the data that you do to your images. There are two different types of catalog structures. One is managed and the other one is referenced. I use both of them, but for very different reasons. A managed catalog file means that when you import into Lightroom, it is going to copy the data, the imagery from the source into this folder, which is the catalog, and it's going to manage all of the files inside of its own little folder structure. The problem with that is that you're moving data unnecessarily through wherever it existed on a memory card or hard drive into a folder, and then from there, the catalog file in Lightroom is going to start to get very, very large. Lightroom runs a lot slower as a result. For performance, I use a referenced catalog file, and this is by far the best way to use Lightroom and to have the fastest performance out of the program. A reference system is going to go and it's going to leave the images alone on the source. In my case, it's that digital warehouse hard drive, and it's just going to copy over the thumbnails of what the images look like into the catalog file. Just some quick tips here on Lightroom. Again, keep the catalog file on the fastest drive possible. Ideally, that's a solid-state drive. You'll thank me later. Do not, I repeat, do not import all of your images from your memory card directly into Lightroom. That is a huge mistake. By doing that, you're just going to bloat up the catalog file, and you're going to be building a ton of unnecessary previews that the program has to render before you can even get to the point of sorting out all the shots. Huge mistake. That's what Photo Mechanic is for. There's nothing that's going to be better than that. Trust me, don't do it inside Lightroom. You want to keep data moving through your workflow. You don't want things to just be stagnant. You don't want to have like this massively large catalog file in Lightroom. You don't want to have a ton of images sitting around on any one drive. The best workflow out there is one that remains very transient. You want to be able to have the data come in, be managed and processed, color corrected, whatever you got to do, and then off to the client and then out to some sort of an archive system so that it's off your plate and it frees up your main operating system. So at this point, I'm completely finished with Lightroom. I've done all the processing and color correction. I then simply export the project out of Lightroom online to a private gallery for the client to see. PixieSet is the online gallery that I use to transmit all my images to my clients. They can see them, they can share them, they can download them. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it, and it's active for 90 days. After that time, I charge $100 to pull their images from the archive drives and reactivate the gallery. So the moment that the client online gallery finishes uploading, I then go back to Lightroom, I select the project, I right-click on it, and I select Export as a new catalog. I select my archive drive, which is another GTEC RAID 1 enclosure. I ensure that I select the dialog box that says Include Master Files. That's super important because what that is effectively going to be doing is creating a managed catalog file on the archive drive. So unlike the original catalog file that I'm using to process all the data in, I'm now converting over to a managed catalog for archive purposes. So now what's going to happen is Lightroom is going to export out all the edits, all the corrections, and it's going to bring in all of the actual raw data files that was living on my digital warehouse drive. It's going to take all of that and put it into this nice little file, which becomes both the catalog and the container for all those raw images, and it's going to put that on the archive drive. This way, down the road, if I need to reference a shoot or design an album or re-export if a client loses pictures, whatever the case is, I can just go back to the archive drive, double-click on that catalog file on the actual hard drive, and then it's going to open Lightroom, and then everything is going to be in there, and I can re-export it out. This is amazing because then I go back to my master catalog file and I can remove that project from it because it's finished, and now it lives on the archive drive, and that keeps my data workflow very transient. It prevents any one of my drives from becoming capacitized. It keeps the catalog file, the master catalog file, from becoming too big and bloated, and it prevents it from just slowing down. If you continue to upload and import projects into Lightroom and you start to have a lot of them in there, even if it's a reference system, it's going to slow down. It's going to get to the point where it takes several seconds to apply adjustments to images. It's just not a good working environment. Again, the idea here is to keep the data moving right through the workflow and right through Lightroom. Once the project exports out, I then verify the integrity on the archive drive. Once it's been verified, I then go back to the master reference catalog file in Lightroom and I delete the project completely, freeing up the space for the next event. At the 90-day mark, when the online client gallery expires, I then go back to my digital warehouse drive and delete everything, keeping in mind that everything that was delivered to the client that's in that gallery is safe and secure in a managed catalog file on the archive drive. Simply put, this ensures that none of the main operational drives in my system ever become capacitized. Only the archive drives, and that's totally fine. That's exactly how this is designed to work. This just ensures that I have 3 months, the client has 3 months to look at everything and make sure that nothing was missing, I didn't forget to include anything, and there's no discrepancies of any kind. It's a little bit of a safety zone, so to speak. So there are a few other hard drives on my desk that are very important to the overall data workflow. One is the data drive. This contains very important backup for my QuickBooks and tax information, things in my calendar, my website and blog, all the client contracts, all the important logos and graphics for my business, all that stuff is on there. But most importantly, this drive facilitates 2 automated daily backups. The first is of the Lightroom master catalog file itself, and the second is the database file for my client relation management software. This software contains all my important client details, email correspondences, and all the details for the photo shoots and the weddings. So the last G-Tech RAID 1 enclosure that I use is dedicated just for video. So videos like this, all my behind the scenes videos, personal videos, videos of my family and son, anything at all that's video related lives on this hard drive. So the 6th and final hard drive that's connected to my computer system is just a standard G-Tech 1TB hard drive, and this is dedicated to be used with Apple's Time Machine program. This program is making hourly backups in the operating system of anything that's going on the local machine itself. Things like emails and computer settings, any documents that may be open and I'm actively working on, that's making an hourly backup on that Time Machine drive. It's convenient because if and when the iMac computer fails, I can run out, buy another computer, bring it home, drop it on my desk, plug in this Time Machine drive, and be able to restore everything perfectly. It's important to note though, I do not rely upon Time Machine nor this hard drive for any of the mission critical data. For that, I have the hard drive enclosures, and the third-party programs are making those automated backups every day. You ready for this? Every 5 days, one of the drive enclosures from all the hard drives on my desk is removed, and then they're transported to my top secret location. And then each one is swapped out to last week's 3rd rotational hard drive copy that lives off-site. When I get home, I just slide the drive into the enclosure, I power it on, and I go to sleep. While I'm sleeping, the drive is going to rebuild itself sector by sector, ensuring that it's exactly the same on both drives. When I wake up in the morning, I now have a new enclosure with all the data being up to date and exactly the same. Plus, another copy that now lives in a watertight military-grade Pelican case several miles away.
Look, the reality is this: you can have all your data backed up in multiple locations on multiple hard drives, different drive enclosures, and all this good stuff. The issue and problem still becomes your physical location. Anything can happen here. There could be a fire, there could be a flood. In the middle of the night, a pipe could burst and flood the whole place. Someone could break in. I got pretty good security though. I mean, anything. The point is, anything can happen. So you need to have a third copy of your important data. That's got to live somewhere else. You have to have a regimen in place to get the data out from your place of business and somewhere else where it's really safe and secure. Now, I know that there is different cloud computing options out there. And if that works for you, then certainly you can do that. Personally though, I love the iCloud system, for example, on my iPhone. If I lose my iPhone or if I break it and need another phone, I have used iCloud to restore that, and I think that's really fantastic. However, that's where it stops for me. Anything at all that I'm being commissioned to do where my name and reputation, things that I'm contractually obligated to manage and produce, those things I just need to have the peace of mind and security of knowing that I have a physical, tangible copy of this data that I'm in complete control over at all times. That's why I do it this way. I just can't trust a third party with all this important data. I mean, this is my entire world. This is my livelihood. This is everything. Managing the data is absolutely the most important thing inside of my business. So the reason why it's 5 days for that offsite backup is for the fact that the data still lives on the memory cards that are still in my camera bag from last week's shoot. So before the next weekend where I might have another wedding, that offsite backup is performed before I go and format the memory cards to shoot that next event or wedding or whatever it's gonna be. So last but certainly not least, to manage all the physical power demands of the computer system, the second display, all the connected hard drives, I have this massive power supply. This is called an APC UPS 2200. And basically this is a huge battery system that is also a computer, and it talks to the iMac, and it's smart in the sense that if there is a power loss, this device is smart enough to go into the computer and shut down the operating system safely, closing out all the programs that are open. It will then go and systematically power down these hard drives in the order in which it's programmed to do. So this way there's no chance that any cord gets ripped out. There's no chance of any data loss of any kind because of an outage. This power supply will also fully operate my entire production table for up to 2 hours consistently. So that way, if I'm home and I'm in the middle of doing something important, I have plenty of time to finish working on that project before I power stuff down. And if I'm not home, then it goes into its automatic mode and it shuts down everything all on its own anyway. So either way, it's great.
So that about wraps up the data workflow video. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and it was helpful to you in some way. If you do have additional comments or would like me to further explain anything, be sure to just comment below and I'll jump right on it. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see me make more, please subscribe to my channel and share the love on social media. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one.